I guess the best way to start this off is by telling everyone exactly how I feel about any of this. And I think it's very important to point out that I didn't particularly want to do this video, only because it was spammed to me in such a short amount of time, and I've never seen anything quite like it. And I don't even really hate neuralities on a personal level. I don't think I hate anybody that I ever cover on a personal level. I think that whatever they say may be stupid, and I may disagree with it, but I do not hate these people on that level. But in this particular video, we are going to eviscerate every single thing that we can, and we're going to do it in the best way possible, because I'm not going to half-ass this, only because I don't know when the next video might come. I don't know when the next argument may surface with this same content creator, Neuralities. We don't know anything in the future, so I guess it's best to just go ahead and tackle this head on.
Content warning, mentions and discussions of sexualization of children, pedophilia, and child pornography. If any of these topics are upsetting to you, you may just want to sit this one out.
I don't think that we need to sit this one out. I think it's very important that everybody watch this all the way to the end, not because of ad revenue, but only because every single bit of this will be important moving forward, and because one of my good friends got his video taken down about probably something relating to this. I'm going to go ahead and do my best job, and we're going to do it the right way.
I wanted to like Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
Then just like it.
It's a wholesome romance between a monster and human, and an openly queer romance at that, which ends up exploring the nature of found families, which, as I discussed in my last video, is one of my favorite types of story in media.
Found family is a trope that is in a lot of anime, surprisingly, and if you look just a little bit, you could probably find a couple of more shows that will show you that same type of trope. Now, I think the reason that you like Kobayashi is because it is an openly queer romance, which is fine, but let's not go ahead and take away just that. It is a show that has a weird way of having some wholesomeness in it, but it also has some lewd stuff in it. It's kind of just the ultimate show if you're looking for virtually anything.
For context, I have seen the first season of Kobayashi's Dragon Maid a couple of years ago. This was back when I still naively listened to AniTuber recommendations, and I wanted to see a cute, lighthearted gay romance between a dragon maid and her tired, cynical crush.
Since my viewer retention hasn't really dropped off quite yet, let me go ahead and tell you about how you shouldn't listen to AniTubers. They literally exist on the internet to tell you how you should feel about a certain show. I've done that maybe a couple of times myself, only because I really like what I recommend, but I generally have more interest outside of anime, outside of video games. I do things in the real life, and a lot of these dudes are afraid to literally go outside and touch grass.
I was delighted when Toru made a point to state that her attraction to Kobayashi is romantic and sexual, completely destroying any possibility of queerbaiting. But the more I watched, and the more the story strayed from Toru and Kobayashi, the increasingly less delighted I became. Until finally episode 6 happened, and one of the children pins down another child, and I had to ask myself, how did I get here?
Wait, didn't you just say that you got here due to AniTuber recommendations? So why are we really asking this question? Are we just trying to fill a gap for some reason?
Dragon Maid recently came under fire when the new season was announced and this character dropped and everybody lost their minds.
No, not everyone. Just your usual suspects. I don't think I really need to say who.
There were a ton of different gut reactions, from her design is terrible to Ilulu did nothing wrong and I stand Ilulu, and her character is great to her design is pedophilic. There were people trying to redesign her and fix her.
I don't understand the obsession with Western artists trying to, quote, fix something that was made by a Japanese person. However someone draws art isn't really an issue, and take it from someone that was very critical of the way that a Reimu piece of art was drawn. You don't want to fix something that isn't broken, but if you want to have your own interpretation, sure, but don't call it fixing someone's shit.
With everyone on Twitter being vocally opinionated about what is a very sensitive issue, it made me realize that maybe they didn't know what they were talking about or what coding even means and how it applies to character design.
Character coding is something that people such as yourself came up with, so that way you can sound a little bit more intelligent, when in reality it makes you sound even more special. See, when a character is coded according to you, then they have to be that way. The same way that Knuckles had to have been black-coded, because He just simply acts and sounds black, despite none of the characteristics about him relating to him being black at all. In fact, all of his voice actors, present and maybe even previous, are all white. If anything, you could make the argument that he may be from a Mayan civilization, but others will link it to rap music being played, which has made us come full circle to it just being downright racist.
For context, I am an artist. Hey, hi, hello, I'm Neuralities. Welcome to my TED Talk.
And just like that, the joke was ran right into the ground.
I really hope this isn't your first video you're seeing of mine, because I usually try to stay in my lane and avoid meaningless discourse.
Until your video blows up, and then you have to make a sequel talking about the same thing, and also degrading the same people. So now I have to sit up here and defend the you-know-whos.
But I went to a fine art school where I learned and studied anatomy, and I have a degree in illustration. So when it comes to art and character design, believe me when I say I know what I'm talking about.
And then we have to put an asterisk next to it because you don't know what you're talking about, in this specific case. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
I may end up over-explaining myself, but I'm just going to try to break this down as thoroughly as I can from an art perspective. So really, this is less of a hot take and more of an explanation behind what is a long-running problem.
There is no long-running problem. It's really you seek out something to be upset about. And let's just say that you didn't like Dragon Maid and you made this video to say reasons why I don't like Dragon Maid. Everyone would be pretty okay with it. But it's the way that you went out of your way to say this character is coded as a child, which means it's pedophilia, when it's 100% not, and that's what we're going to do today, is explain all of it.
What is coding? Coding is a term used in media to refer to when an author wants to convey an aspect of a character to the audience, but does not want to or maybe isn't allowed to explicitly state what that aspect is. And sometimes the character may not even literally be the thing that they are being coded as.
Okay, so where is that written? Oh, that's right, you tried to use this Wikipedia article, so let me go ahead and do all the heavy lifting for you so we can all read through it like a loving family. See, you only highlighted certain parts. I highlighted everything that was before, after, and during that entire segment that you highlighted, so let's read through it together. To that extent, codes represent a broad interpretive framework used by both addressers and their addressees to encode and decode the messages. Self-evidently, the most effective communications will result when both creator and interpreter use exactly the same code. Since signs may have many levels of meaning from the denotational to the connotational, the addresser's strategy is to select and combine the signs in ways that limit the range of possible meanings likely to be generated when the message is interpreted. As you can see through pretty much all of the blue highlighted text, it really depends ultimately on the nature of the medium and everything else relating to it, even the genre fiction that you're going with. So when you boil it down to anime, then you can have your 5,000-year-old dragon, and you can have them be small and petite, or you can have them be large and muscular. It ultimately doesn't matter because the creator is going to make something that they wanted to make. And if it happens to be in the form of in the story, let me remind you that this is all fiction. In the story, it could be a small child-like creature. Then yes, you can have that 5,000-year-old dragon, and there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Now, I myself may find it personally weird, but that's all up to scrutiny.
For instance, Renaissance-era Disney villains were often designed and behaved in a way that read to the audience as queer-coded. Scar is effeminate and willowy, Jafar wears eyeliner, Ursula was literally based off of a drag queen.
While correct, yes, Ursula was based off of a famous drag queen from way back in the day, but if we look at other characters such as Scar or even Jafar that you brought up recently, we can take a look at those characters for examples of the villain archetype, what they're supposed to look like, and how they relate to something like a hero who is supposed to look very pure and good by default. If we go based off of how looks are for anything that might be a villain, then usually they look a little disheveled. They look something a little messy, but something that would make them stand out and make them look different. Something like a Frieza to your Ursula that looks something probably made up from a character that could be coded as gay if we were to go that route, or something like Griffith, for example. His actions are the reason that he's a villain, with his long history. But even something like Vicious, who just looks like he might not be such a good character. But again, if we're going based off of coding, that's what we could infer. But if we were to actually watch the media that we engage in, then we can find out reasons why they're actually a villain, and not because we're trying to take away the fact that they might be gay if they are evil, in the case that you're going to bring up now.
At the time, the character designers were using this coding to illustrate that there was something inherently deviant about these characters because of the way they contrasted to the designs of the cis, het, young, and beautiful ideal of the protagonists.
Being cis and het does nothing but perpetuate stereotypes, and so if you don't like people using them on you, then you need to stop using them yourselves.
But this decision sort of backfired and ended up making queer audiences really sympathetic and into the villains who are overall fun and a bit campy as opposed to the hyper-masculine and feminine leads.
I don't know why it's such a crime to like a villain. A villainous character doesn't have to be your ultimate favorite, you want to be this person. You're supposed to understand their plight and then try to engage with this media as it is. It's just an entertainment platform. It's something that you engage with to be entertained, not to become.
And this is the thing that you have to understand about coding. All coding is not inherently bad. It really depends on why the author is choosing to code a character and what that coding is meant to convey. When a corporation like Disney consistently codes characters as a marginalized group, like people of color or the LGBT community, in order to specifically convey to the audience that they are evil, that is obviously not a good thing. Which is why context and framing is so important.
You know, if you were to rip away coding, you would literally have no argument. So let's go ahead and look at something that doesn't have that same kind of level of thinking. So in the movie The Princess and the Frog, the one main character, Dr. Facilier, he is the one that probably might be gay. But again, I don't think that that really matters in the context of the story. Neither does anything else, including Scar or even Jafar from earlier. And if we were to look at things like Disney's other live-action movies, like The Haunted Mansion and maybe A Wrinkle in Time, which was a movie, we can look at those and also infer the same thing, because the people of color in those movies are the good people and not the bad ones. We could even take it a step further as well. Even in the JoJo books that you can read and find that have the interviews with Araki himself, he even specified that he drew Dio to look like a Greek god because he wanted him to be ultimate power. He wanted him to be the ultimate god, but also just kind of like a final boss. And you can kind of see that style consistently throughout parts 1 through 3, even in the Pillarmen from part 2, who have rippling muscles and are mostly portrayed to just be buff men. So I guess if you're going to be that weird about it, you should also try to engage with the media that you're consuming. So finding out the context of everything that you just talked about, I think this makes a little bit more sense.
What is child coding?
The short good answer is it's fucking stupid. The long stupid answer is whatever you're about to say.
Like queer coding, child coding isn't inherently problematic, it just depends on how it's used. Like, Baby Yoda is child-coded.
Wow, with a name like Baby Yoda, I would never have figured that he might be childlike according to his species.
This robot is child-coded.
No, he's a robot.
Koroks and Kodama are also child-coded.
No, they're creepy, and they're not real.
Child coding just means that a character has design elements that make them read to the audience as childlike even when they may not be children in a technical sense.
I want you to remember exactly what you just said here. They are childlike, but they are not children. Because again, they're not real. So I want you to keep that same energy.
Some of these design elements include being small, having big eyes, being naive or possibly nonverbal. And when it comes to discussing child coding and how people throw the term around, we end up running into some problems with exactly what it does and does not apply to, because short women also exist.
Shout out to all my short stacks out there.
Take, for instance, La Brava, a small-time villain from My Hero Academia who is a short adult woman. Her design has elements that can potentially read as child-coded.
Yeah, because according to your definition of whatever the fuck, that means that she is a child because she is child-coded. Again, this is all by your definition. I'm not saying anything.
She's short, her head is big, and her eyes are placed lower down on her face. And I think the creators may have been aware of that possibility and made a few deliberate design choices to mitigate that reading.
Or maybe they just wanted to have another character.
Like, La Brava is short, but she's curvy. And not just her chest, her waist to hips ratio is that of an adult. She fits in with Hero Academia's style of cartoony, exaggerated silhouettes. Her voice actor is an adult who uses her normal speaking voice.
Ugh, this is so frustrating!
Whatever do you mean, dear girl?
The JSTOR video should be racking up views, but it's barely being watched. People on the internet have no taste. クマが染みついちゃってる。気味悪がられないかしら。
Her Japanese voice actor is a bit higher pitched, but only in the way that Japanese women tend to speak in a higher register, and not because she's deliberately trying to sound younger.
Well, I can go ahead and tell you now that that's a load of shit, because if you actually listen to her voice actress in English, then you would know that that's not her regular speaking volume of voice. That's not even the same tone.
I'm really good at playing like young girls, and my voice is just kind of suited for that.
Ugh, this is so frustrating!
Of course they don't sound nearly the same, even though they're the same voice actress. It's because she has to make her voice a little bit more high-pitched to make up for the small frame that she has. And again, we could relate this to almost anything, and it's not just her Japanese voice actress that does this.
La Brava is romantically involved with Gentle, but again, in the text they are both explicitly consenting adults, and if you think that short and tall people can't be together, you may want to take a moment to check yourself.
You really just made up a type of person just so you could make this point, because no one says that tall people and short people can't be in relationships. If anything, I want my big, tall mommy GF to hold me tight and tell me everything's gonna be okay.
But even if you read La Brava as child-coded, it's not really an issue because her character isn't sexualized. This is what I mean when I say that child coding isn't inherently a problem, but it becomes one when the characters are not explicitly adults and are also being sexualized.
It took us a little bit longer than usual to get to this point, but this is where the video really starts.
Which brings me back to the impetus for this video and how this all applies to Dragon Maid. So in the case of Dragon Maid, like putting Ilulu aside, like we're not even going to get to her yet, we have to address that Kana is designed to be a child and is also sexualized.
You know, I would normally just try to make a joke about this or maybe even try to find something to debunk this with, but I'm only going to simply ask why and how.
Now, right out of the gate, some people will try to argue that she's not technically a child because she's a dragon, and they age differently, and she's really like 1,000.
Yeah, you watched the series, you should know that this is what she looks like. A white dragon with blue eyes. Not an actual child, because again, this show is fictional. It's something that is not real whatsoever.
But even by dragon standards, she is still a child. But even by dragon standards, she is still a child.
How exactly does that fucking work? If she's a dragon, which are mythical creatures, then how in the world... You know what? Maybe Fritanga's right. I need to light one up.
Hey, Necro. I just want to share this blunt with you, because I know you're having a rough time. Just, hold on. Let me just, Oh, God, that's good. Yeah, all right, here you go. Hold on, let me just have a little more real quick. Oh, my God. Hold on. I just got it, homie. Hold on. Oh, fuck, you're just gonna have to roll your own.
Toru and Kobayashi act as her adopted paternal figures. She goes to elementary school and is in the 3rd grade. On her trivia page, it states that her human appearance mimics that of an 8 or 9-year-old.
I'm not even going to bring up how it has the word mimics in it, but she isn't. So, case dismissed.
She is referred to as a child in the text multiple times.
In the context of the story, she looks like a child to them, so she will be referred to as such.
And she is also wearing thigh highs.
I already know the answer, but what's the problem with the thigh highs?
I don't even know how to begin how to explain this, but thigh highs are a sexually charged piece of clothing in a way that stockings or knee socks just are not.
Except that you're completely wrong. And if we wanted to say that they are sexually charged, then what is sexually charged about Hatsune Miku in this picture? Or what about these Japanese schoolgirls? I know that I'm going to probably have federal agents knocking at my door, but when you see them, they're also wearing over-the-knee socks, which is what they're technically called, not the stupid shit you keep saying.
Apparently, there is even a Japanese term that refers to the gap between the skirt and thigh highs that was popularized due to anime and moe subculture.
It's the same way that 4chan is responsible for coining the term waifu. It's just weeb shit. It's nothing to really look that far into. I promise you it's not that deep. But if you really want to go off on a tangent that makes you look like an absolute shithead, then I guess go ahead.
If she were just wearing socks or even stockings, this wouldn't be a problem if the framing didn't also sexualize her.
This is sexualized? Fellas, is it gay to bend over and grab your shoes?
I'm going to very quickly show some of the clips of how the framing sexualizes Kana, and here's the timestamp to skip it if you just can't deal with that today. Okay? Okay.
I learned my mistake from the last time I let you get away with talking about ReZero, so what I did instead was I just sped this part up. Because if you really want to slow it down and watch this part, nothing in here is explicit. There's nothing that shows actually a lot of skin, and even in the case of the last clip, it shows her washing her back, and I didn't realize that it was sexual to get your homies nice and clean.
Kana is not even child-coded. She, in the text, is literally a child.
You know that she's also not real too, right? She's also a dragon in the story. So why do we keep bringing up this weird semantic speak to say that she's a child when she's definitely not real flesh and blood? She's lines on a fucking screen. The aunties will always try to trick themselves into saying, well, you guys like drawings of what? As though to imply that it is of a real child. Well, it's not, because the last time I checked, real children don't have giant bug eyes. They don't shoot magic beams out of their hands either. So before we start trying to throw some fiction in with reality, let's make sure that we understand everything perfectly clear. The lolicons are looking at fictional characters, not ever thinking of real children, whereas you, the people, the aunties, are usually the ones that see children, and I think that says more about you than it does about them.
But is Ilulu child-coded?
Well, Neuralities is going to say yes, but I'm going to go ahead and say no. Because of her rules, she is busty, therefore making her not a child.
Another misunderstanding, or in air quotes, counter-argument that seemed to crop up a lot around this discussion is what childlike facial proportions mean and how that applies to anime, where most characters are already stylized to have larger eyes and heads.
Well, you already kind of said it. It's because of their style. So anime can be drawn in a myriad of different ways, and they can either look, quote-unquote, look like a child, or they don't.
A simple way to design a character to appear as older or younger is to measure how many heads tall they are.
Yes, Andrew Loomis made this illustration to show that you can count how many heads there are to make it match up with the way that their age is. So if it's like this one where it's just kind of small and it has a bigger body, then it's more likely an adult male, where if it's the reverse, then it might be a child.
Note that most people are not going to be 8 heads tall. Like, this guy here is a 1/4 inch short of 7 feet tall. How many heads tall you are is going to vary from person to person depending on your height. For instance, I'm 5'4", and if I measure the length of my head, I'm roughly only 6.3 heads high, which proportionally ends up putting me in the 10-year-old boy category, which is frankly not very surprising.
You hate small lolly characters, yet you are small like a lolly. curious.
If we proportionally scale up the child to match the adult's height, you can see that the head of the child is twice the size of the adult proportionally. And if we resize their heads to be the same size, we can see that the child's facial features are much lower down than the adult's.
Well, here's where you're wrong, and it's a good thing that my friend Netsu the Perv is the one that helped me put this together because we wanted to make sure that we covered all of our bases. In your argument, you talk about the head size, but you literally only had to do one thing, and that was turn the page, and then you would have gotten to this, where it shows you the various standards of proportion, which it shows you the normal, the idealistic, the fashion, and the heroic sizes. You can see at a glance why the actual or normal proportions are not very satisfactory. All academic drawings based on normal proportions have this dumpy, old-fashioned look. Most fashion artists sketch the figure even beyond 8 heads, and in allegorical or heroic figures, the superhuman type, 9 heads may be used effectively. And again, this weird comparison that you try to do with the heads thing falls short because you literally didn't want to turn the page. Because this is exactly what you were looking for, the thing that disproves your entire argument based on what child-coded may be for the case of Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, and it's because the head size is different and it's stylized, so you can't just scale up a head and think that it's gonna work.
So when I see people argue that Dragon Maid is just in the classic anime moe style and everyone is chibified and cute and that there's no difference between Kana and Toru, I can agree that it is hard to see the difference because it is stylized.
Alright then, pack it up. I don't think that there's anything left to talk about because you've already just proved yourself in this one sentence.
But there is a difference if you are actually willing to look at and take the time to compare them.
But why do I care though? Why do I care that there might be a childlike character in the show and I'm not watching it for that? I've seen Dragon Maid all the way through. And do you know where I stopped at? The very end, because I saw it all and I didn't care about anything else in between. If I have to spend 20 or 30 minutes trying to look at a character and say, this might look like a child, I don't think that this is the thing that I want to do. I don't care about any of that. I don't want to know anything more than what I've already seen. You're going out of your way to be extra.
Measuring them by how many heads tall they are, we can see that Toru is just under 6 heads, which seems about right for the average Japanese woman. Meanwhile, Kana is only 4.5 heads tall, which gives her the proportions of a 2-year-old.
Since I know you're such a beacon of knowledge and information, I figured I'd go ahead and let you know that if Kana were really in the 3rd grade, that would put her in somewhere around the age of maybe 8 or 9 years old, instead of the one that you just mentioned, which was 2 years old. And that's kind of stupid, because even then, according to your head analysis thing, that would make you a teenage boy, even though you're clearly over the age of 18. So why in the world would you say something so fucking stupid that it disproves you the second that you say it? Maybe you shouldn't have put this in the video.
I don't know what you were expecting at this point, frankly.
A better fucking video for sure.
Let's compare her facial proportions. If I select this image of Kana and overlay her on top of Toru, and when I resize her head to account for the perspective and have the chin line up in the same place, you can see that Kana's eyes are significantly lower down. Her face shape is round and less defined, which is a feature that signifies that she is a child because she was designed to look like a child.
Again, context matters, but also the stylization of Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, which is not meant to look realistic, almost in the slightest.
And if we do the same for Ilulu, we can see that she's proportionally the same as Kana. And if we overlay her on top of Toru, we can see that her face shape is a little bit more defined than Kana, which would make sense considering that she's supposed to be a bit older than her. But her eyes are just as low down.
For some weird reason, you have this fascination to show us this, but according to you earlier, if they're a little bit smaller, let's just say, and they have a full-figured body, in this case, Ilulu has big old titties, wouldn't that then not make her a child because you said that that's how it was coded, right? I mean, I'm just taking your logic.
And the thing is, they even unbabyified her a bit from the manga.
First of all, I don't know why you're looking at children, and 2, what children are you looking at that have E-cup-sized titties?
And listen, I tried this with La Brava, and yeah, she's not even 4 heads tall. But again, La Brava is in the text inarguably an adult character with an adult's voice and mannerisms, while Kana and Ilulu are not, and they talk like children.
But you don't know any of their ages. It's never explicitly told you that they are like 5 years old or anything like that either. So you're going based off of assumption because they say in the show child when that's all they can see is something that looks like a child to them in the show, which is again fictional. How is this very hard to understand? How is this hard to grasp? I don't get it. And also, I had to cut out a little bit of this video because I don't want to get DMCA'd for your fucking stupidity, so I just went ahead and took that part out.
And again, Ilulu is supposed to be visually 16 anyway, so I don't know what the argument is here, y'all. She is still depicted as a minor.
Maybe you skipped that part where it says apparently because, again, she's a dragon.
Like, everybody understands how dog years work. I don't understand how we keep coming back to the 10,000-year-old dragon well.
This bitch really just compared, she really just compared dogs to dragons. What? Holy shit.
It does not matter that Baby Yoda is 50 years old, because for his species, he is a baby.
You really woke up today. You woke up whatever day you recorded this and you said, how can I say the most outlandish shit anyone's ever said about something fictional? And this is what you came up with.
Their lifespan is different.
They're not fucking real. What do you mean they're different? They don't exist.
Did Ilulu start the problem? No, I think she just brought light to a problem that was already apparent in Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
So let me understand something. You watched through Dragon Maid Part 1, said, you know what, this is perfect. I don't want anything different. And then when Twitter exploded with Ilulu, you then said, I watched something problematic. What can I do to fix this situation? Oh, I know. I'm going to say that it's bad now. Do you hear the words that escape your fucking gullet?
From the beginning, Dragon Maid has always had unrealistic female body proportions, but up until now, it has only ever been depicted on characters that weren't minors. So I think this was the nail in the coffin for a lot of people.
Well, hopefully those same people can go ahead and start watching something else instead of shitting it up for everyone else.
Here someone even tried to fix Ilulu by flattening her chest, but this does not even fix the problem because it is these other design elements that code her as a child and she is still in thigh highs and her underwear.
And do you know what this proves? It proves that no matter what anyone does, it's never good enough. You'll never make a design that will please everybody. You'll never have the character that you want to make because someone else is going to be upset for you. Like if someone wanted to be critical of any of the designs that you've made, then they could say that it looks like a 40-year-old man trying to fit themselves into a onesie, but they don't do that because they're not dipshits. In fact, we know that you have a different art style, so no one really cares. No one will bat an eye. But the second you see something you don't like, well, it's problematic. And that's, again, only after you watch the first season of Dragon Maid. You didn't have a problem with it before. It was only just now. And again, it will never be good enough. No matter how many times that you try to redesign something, no matter how many times you try to appease other people, it'll always just fall short. It doesn't matter what you do. So what do these creators do? Well, they do exactly what they did with Ilulu. They go ahead and give them bigger titties. They show off more cleavage. And you know what? I bet you at some point, if they really want to, they're going to make smaller characters. And there's not a goddamn thing you can do to stop them.
Coding can be used for many reasons, but historically it has been used when you want to depict something that may be socially frowned upon or even illegal, and you would get in trouble if it were explicitly in the text.
I don't know if you guys care or not, but Claire here is black coded. She likes listening to hip hop and R&B, and she likes playing sports. So again, that means that she's black coded. Now, if you ask for more elaboration, no, I'm not going to give that to you because it's illegal to talk about that stuff. It's frowned upon for me to make a character that I want to make have interest that maybe I like or that she herself may like. And again, she's not real. None of this is real.
And I do have to wonder if the dragon angle and giving Ilulu such a large chest was one of the ways the author tried to sidestep the child coding accusations.
Did you notice that for most of the dragons, with the exception being Kana, that they all have big boobs? Or maybe that's just me trying to find something where it doesn't exist.
It is the pattern of all these things in Dragon Maid that is upsetting. Even if it doesn't happen that often, it's the pattern of Rika's eyes rolling back when she touches Kana, Shota being consistently flustered by Lukua, the sunscreen section, the compromising framing of Kana, and now Ilulu's design. It all starts adding up.
Quick question, I doubt that this has ever happened to you, but when you were just a wee child, did you ever have a crush on someone, or did they ever have a crush on you? I don't think that you ever had that happen, because if you did, then you would know that a lot of children don't quite know how to express their emotions properly. So when Homegirl gets flustered by Kana, like being all up against her, that's all that she thinks about it is, I really like this person. Some of what I say in all of my videos, I usually leave it up to your interpretation, because I would assume that people have more common sense than they let on, and so there's not a lot of sources that I can really link for things like this.
Closing thoughts. Do I think everybody who watches Dragon Maid is automatically a child predator? No, I don't, and neither should you.
Well, that's good, because we're gonna make sure that we comb over everything when it comes to you in the next part.
That kind of single-minded ideology is inherently flawed. Vast blanket statements like that are just not true.
I don't want to hear anything about blanket statements coming from you, especially when you get done with this video, you roll right into the next one saying exactly the thing that you said you're against.
And the thing is, like, I get it. I get why some people want to defend Dragon Maid, like parts of it are legitimately good. When the focus is only on Kobayashi and Toru and their found family dynamic with Kana, there's a lot I genuinely like. And I was willing to put up with some stuff that made me uncomfortable because there still aren't a lot of canonically queer romances, and definitely not ones with this level of sakuga.
Generally, most people are pretty okay with problematic things in their television shows. In fact, I would say that it adds a little bit more to the entire story. Especially in the case of this, you're watching anime. It's not exactly going to be a Kubrick type of film. If you don't like this and you've watched through it, then there's no reason for this video to exist, other than to pad your own ego and to help other people see the same plight as you.
People can watch media that is problematic critically, and just because they watched it or liked some aspects of it does not inherently make them problematic in the same way, because that is not how humans work, and no media is perfect. But at the same time, you can't turn around and say that the people who are upset about the design of a child being sexualized are being too sensitive because they just don't get anime.
They don't get anime. And I know that with the same type of argument that people always put up is that, well, it's always existed in anime, so that makes it okay. And yeah, I kind of get that point, and I also get the point that maybe there's just a little too much fan service for you, or something along the lines of this Dragon Maid nonsense. But at the same time, they know what they're getting into. You knew what you were getting into, and if you didn't like that one thing, you said, whoa, this is a huge red flag, then just stop watching it. You don't have to put up with it. It's kind of like how my mom always watches TV. She loves herself some Walking Dead, and so she watches other television shows, or ones that are on like HBO or something. And as soon as there's sex on the TV, she immediately turns it off and she complains about it. And she tells everybody that she was watching a show and then they ended up having sex. And I call her a Puritan for it, but not really, because she's my mom and I love her. But at the same time, I don't think that she should engage with a show that's like that, because she obviously doesn't want to. So it's your job, if you want to make it that, to tell people to stay far away from Dragon Maid. But don't sit here and say that it's sexualized children when they're not real. If you care about real children being sexualized, then why was it on your same website, Tumblr, that they found massive amounts of child pornography? And then on Twitter, there's massive amounts of child pornography there being shared. So if you really care, report it. But if you don't, then shut the hell up and just move on with your life.
As an audience and as creators, we have to ask ourselves, what message is a piece of work sending out into the world?
I hope mine gets people more engaged with the thought process that they should find more common sense and to not be offended by every single thing that crosses their eyes.
And how are people going to respond to it? And if your story invites predators in and makes a space where they might feel validated, maybe you should assess yourself and consider making some changes.
Lolicons lust after things that are fictional beings just entirely. And I would say that with the Super Smash Bros. Community, they seek after real children, even though their game does not really have children in it. It's fictional, sure, but the people themselves that play the game actively engage with underage people. And that's a problem. So, if anything, you need to be directing your attention to them, but it's always good to cover all bases.
So with that being said, I don't think I'm going to partake in Season 2 of Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
Oh, but don't worry, we're only just beginning. And I know that you're thinking, man, how long can this video go? Well, you can see the little thing down there at the bottom. This one goes on for quite a bit, and we're going to cover as much as we possibly can without getting completely shed on.
Alright, let's talk about problematic media.
My philosophy is that problematic media doesn't truly exist. Everything has a reason for it existing, so if you're watching something that might be offensive and it's meant to be offensive, then that's because it's supposed to make you feel a certain type of way.
Content warning mentions and discussions of the sexualization of children, child pornography, pedophilia, death threats, rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and transphobia.
I just want to remind you that this is all because of animated cartoons, things that aren't real. Apparently we have to discuss those things, otherwise we just won't get anywhere, and it's all things that you keep pushing into this video.
I'm going to be talking about some of these issues at length, and I'm going to try and not show anything graphic, but I may have to include a few shots of anime or manga of children being sexualized in the beginning section, so please be warned of that.
Wait, why do you have to show it? If you think that it's the sexualization of children, and you know that in certain parts of the world it's illegal, then why would you post it on YouTube?
So, my last video on child-coded character design ended up being... I don't want to say popular because that feels wrong, but it did receive a larger response than I am used to.
I think I may have stated this in the video that I made of you at first, where you know the type of audience that you're going for, and it's exactly who showed up to your video, the same way that mine is probably targeted towards the opposition. But in fact, it's not really made for anyone. It's made for myself. I don't care if anyone agrees or disagrees with me on any of these points, but the fact is that you've entered into a space, and you think that it's made for you, and it's not. It's made for the people who actually enjoy the thing that they indulge. The things like anime, for example. You don't really like anime, you definitely didn't understand any of the basic level shit that's in ReZero, so I don't think that I should have to take your opinion on anything. You're as ill-informed as the anti-tubers you claim to not like.
First of all, I did receive a lot of comments from people being genuinely happy that I talked about this. And to all those people, thank you. I am touched beyond belief, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that your kindness and support makes this all worth it. And to the audience of people who did not agree with me, well, okay. I originally wanted to put this part at the end of the video, but I don't think the people who disagree with me will actually engage with this video for long enough to get to the ending, because they certainly didn't with the last video.
Why is that? Is that because we all came to the conclusion after watching every dumb thing you said? I mean, we sat here and watched your entire video all the way through, and we still don't agree with you.
So, here is my follow-up statement to the Dragon Maid video, I guess.
Nice passive aggressiveness.
I know it seems silly to keep talking about this and like I'm wasting my time, but I genuinely want to believe that most of the people who disagreed with me are not acting with malicious intent, but are just simply misinformed or maybe a bit confused.
No, I don't need to be any of those things, because I understand that touching real kids is a no-no, and that looking at fictional ones isn't that bad. It's weird to me, but I can also differentiate reality from fiction. And clearly you're one of those people who can't.
If you are willing to take the time to actually listen to my side and then you still disagree with me, then that's all I can ask. Because there is no conversation at all if you're not even willing to engage in the first place.
There literally is no engagement because you've already shut everyone out by saying how weird they are and how everything is problematic in Dragon Maid because of the weird looking things that are in it. And that's perfectly fine if you think that they're weird, but don't taint and poison the well if you're going to just sit here and shit on everyone and say, guys, it's okay. We can have a conversation, as you proceed to stab them in the stomach.
So before you start writing a comment on this video, I want you to really take some time to think critically about which side of this argument you want to land on.
Ah, the right side of history argument. These ones always go so well for the person that introduces it.
The reason I brought up the author of Rurouni Kenshin not facing jail time or even being fired for his possession of roughly 100 DVDs of real child porn, like not anime, actual human children, was because he is not the exception to the rule in Japan, he's kind of the standard.
I would hate to tell you that a lot of people that saw when that story broke, that they didn't want anything to do with him. They said Rurouni Kenshin art and the story is perfectly fine, and they learned to separate themselves from the artist. You can still enjoy the art without having to enjoy the artist necessarily, especially in the case of Rurouni Kenshin, where none of his works featured him having any type of explicit intercourse or intercourse at all with anybody underage. It was all between consensual adults, but even in the case of Rurouni Kenshin, which is pretty much a shonen series that was in Shonen Jump magazine, it's about fighting samurai.
The possession of child pornography only became totally illegal in Japan in 2015. Charges for possession include imprisonment for up to 1 year and being fined up to 1 million yen, which is just under 9,000 US dollars. He was fined 200,000 yen, or less than $2,000.
And people nowadays still think it's too light of a sentence for him. They think that he should be expelled from ever touching anything that is a manga that is Rurouni Kenshin, or anything that has to do with Shueisha entirely. But the company is the one that said that they still wanted to work with him. So if you don't want to support it, then don't support Shonen Jump. And if you don't support Shonen Jump, then I think that they'll finally get the message. But no one was ever thrilled to death that he was finally touching children. In fact, everybody just, they wanted nothing to do with him. Even fans of Rurouni Kenshin wanted him out. And ultimately, it comes down to Japan's laws. And as much as we may think that it's a little insane over here, they are the ones that conduct everything over there.
To everyone who commented about the sexualization of child characters in anime having no real-world harm, and that it's just a part of Japan's culture, I would like to inform you of the increasing rates of child abuse, which includes sexual abuse, that Japan has been experiencing, reaching record-breaking heights for the last 29 years in a row.
Well, let's take a look at some of these numbers that you've brought up, according to the links that you provided that I know that you didn't read through. So in the one where it shows abuse reported to child welfare centers, you can look at all those numbers that are color-coded right here, because of physical abuse being in the red, neglect being in the cyan color, sexual abuse being yellow, and then psychological abuse being in the purple. And in those, you can see which one is the most reported crime. The ones that are in the purple obviously have the most due to psychological abuse, meaning something like telling their kids that they're ugly or that they are underperforming in their schools. Something a little bit more hardcore than that. I'm sure you've seen pretty much most of the media that shows that. But then when you look at the sexual abuse, well, it's still right there in that little slither. And then if we were to look at something like neglect, like not caring for their children, not feeding them, and then the physical abuse, which is probably where they beat them with something, maybe a little bit like a belt or maybe a hanger or something like that, a bunch of different things. That is contributed to this entire center for the child welfare. And that's all of the abuse that's been reported. The expanded definition of what constitutes child abuse, such as psychological or even neglect, kind of contribute to those numbers as well. And they're on the rise, unfortunately, but that's because of the broad definition that it constitutes in this case. But then if we were to look at how long ago this began, and they're using 2020 numbers, by the way, you can see that the study started in 1990. And if you were to go ahead and start looking at the time between, then I guess you would get your 29-year mark. And they actually leave out 2010 and 2011 a little bit due to the Fukushima incident. You're also trying to link this to lolicon material, so something that is drawn and not consistent of any real people, to try to say, well, it's because of anime and the normalization of it that these cases in Japan have gone up, when none of these are ever stated to be the case. So it's pretty much they could just be factors outside of anime and manga, and they could just be because of abusive people in general.
All while American child abuse rates have been on the decline.
In the previous study that we just looked over, those numbers were actually brought about because of the police themselves wanting to find out some more answers. It states, most of the reports were made by police or through other official channels. So that means that when they were reported, they were actually put onto that list. But if they weren't reported or people didn't step forward, then they were never accounted for. The same thing happens here in America, where maybe a child is being abused right now, and they're stuck in someone's basement, and they can't necessarily go to the police. Sometimes those cases take a long time to even appear.
To everyone bringing up Japan's age of consent, sure. At 13, Japan's base age of consent is the lowest of any developed country. However, many prefectures also have local corruption of minors or obscenity statutes, which raise the de facto age of consent to 16 to 18. The effective age of consent in Tokyo by local statute is 18.
Japan isn't the only country in the world that has their age of consent laws being the age of 13. In fact, the other ones, which I guess if you were to go by developed, it would be South Korea. But even then, the Penal Code of Japan that was established in 1907 sets the age of consent at 13. Any sexual activity with a person under 13 is considered to be statutory rape and can result in a prison sentence up to 20 years. However, Chapter 34 of the Children Welfare Act also forbids any act of fornication with children, defined as anyone under 18 years of age.
And it's not like this is an issue that is set in stone either. It can be changed. In November 2020, students submitted a petition to raise the age of consent from 13 to 16, which received 40,000 signatures.
You see that part right underneath it that says anyone having sex with a minor under 13 can be arrested for statutory rape under the criminal law, but charging someone with sex crimes for having intercourse with a person over the age of 13 requires proof of violent action or threats. This one is just another example of it just being expanded, which is a good thing. I think that we should have more laws like this, but again, it already exists. This is just to start the process a little bit better.
Arguing that it's fine because it's not technically illegal in Japan should mean nothing to you.
We don't like it because it's weird to us, and it's also cultural differences. And yeah, it's messed up if anyone's having sex with someone under the age of 18, in my own opinion. But again, I don't go to every other place and tell them how to do what they do. You could say it's inaction on my part, but I'm not the police, and I don't really care what happens to something that isn't particularly in my country, or even in my state. So if something's happening in Japan, I'm not the one that's held responsible. I think that they should change their laws, and I think that anybody that is under the age of 18 probably shouldn't be having sex with an adult. And that's just my take on it, but again, cultural differences will always take priority.
I can guarantee from my video analytics that at least 44% of you are from the United States. Like 100 people living in Japan clicked on my video, which is like 0.01%. They are not the people I am trying to talk to here.
Then why do I care about what Japan's laws are if I don't live there?
You cannot use cultural differences as a defense when part of that culture also ends up hurting people.
I can and I will. Whatever happens in Saudi Arabia or in the Middle East, if they decide that they don't like the gays so much and they throw them off of rooftops, I can't do anything about that. I think it's wrong. But again, it's not my place to try to be the world police. If you want something changed in the country that you live in, then maybe you should do something about it.
Media does not exist in a vacuum.
I know what you're going to get to, but unfortunately for you guys, I have to censor this out because Susan wouldn't be happy if I posted this.
And portraying sexualized child characters in any media normalizes the sexualization of children to the audience. Why do you think so many of you can't even see this as a problem? It's because anime has normalized it to you.
And also, none of this matters anyway, because guess what I found out after making the Dragon Maid video? The author, Cool Kyo Shinja, has drawn at least 5 comics of child porn, so there is literally no point in defending this person. one of which is 194 pages in length. Do you know how long it takes to draw nearly 200 pages of anything? This is a theme in Dragon Maid for a reason. This isn't even a matter of possession. This guy is producing and distributing comics of child porn.
I will ask you this one time, and I will ask you this one time only. If you think that what was shown there that I had to censor out because YouTube would have already yeeted my channel, why do you think it's appropriate to not only show it uncensored, but also distribute it to a bunch of people around the world? I don't understand this logic. In fact, it's so stupid that I'm just not even going to respond to it because there's going to be something way more stupid than this. And I think that's probably where I'll end it because I was planning on covering the whole video, but you don't deserve an entire video, and I'll explain why at the end.
And look, I know doujinshi or hentai of child porn aren't illegal in Japan. This guy has not done anything that I know of that could be met with legal action. And even in America, when it comes to drawn child porn, it's a little messy, right? In 2005, in Richmond, Virginia, Dwight Worley was sentenced to 20 years in prison for his possession of child porn, including hentai, digital photos of real children, and graphic text-based emails. Among the arguments in his appeal was that cartoons are protected under the First Amendment because they do not depict real children. He also claimed the statute is unconstitutional because text-only emails cannot be obscene. 2 judges rejected those arguments. A third agreed with Worley on those issues, but joined in the majority in affirming his convictions on the counts pertaining to the photographs. The Protect Act of 2003 includes the possession of anime or manga that portrays children in sexual activities as a prosecutable offense. The Supreme Court held that virtual child pornography was protected free speech, provided that the virtual depictions are not obscene. Obscenity, including obscene depictions of children, either virtual or real, is unprotected speech.
While researching this, I came across a lot of links with a lot of text, so I guess I'll just go ahead and sum it up for you, and I'll leave the links down in the description anyways. But in this one specific case, in the state of Virginia, it is 100% illegal, whereas somewhere like in the state of California, if you were to have lolly hentai for any reason whatsoever, then it is still constitutional and you can have it, as long as it's not any real depictions of real children. So if you're still reading Dragon Maid and you live in California, then you're in the clear. But if you're in somewhere like perhaps Utah, it is explicitly banned. In the United States, we have some legal gray areas, and this happens to be one of them. So you can live in a place like California and be perfectly okay, but as soon as you take that same material and go to somewhere like Utah, or maybe in this case like Virginia, then you've broken the law there in that state. And if it moves up to the federal level, then you're in really big trouble. Now, the whole Worley case was actually done in 2007 and then completed in 2008. But in that time, the internet was still a little bit in its coming of age type of, thing, weirdly enough. No pun intended. But the entire thing here is that the internet was still very much young. And so having something like this lolly hentai, for example, was probably far out of the realm of what the courts knew. The same way that we're still fighting over the Digital Millennial Copyright Act, something that was made in the early 90s to help combat anything relating to piracy. These definitely aren't the same for sure, but it still goes to show that something can change in the near future because as we go a little bit further into the internet era, we find that rules need to be a little bit more optimized, for lack of a better word. In the case of Worley and his entire appeal, well, when it happened, it was unfortunate for him, and no one really wanted to back him up. Not even the so-called lolicons wanted to as well. Now, if I wanted to go a step further and tell you how bad of a human Worley was, it's because back in 1999, he used a Virginia Commonwealth University computer, in which he was actually downloading real child pornography, which is against the law no matter where you go, even in the state of California, for example. So no, I don't think that anybody would really go out of their way to defend him, and we would denounce someone that goes out of their way to contribute to something so fucking vile.
Kobayashi's Dragon Maid has a story. It depicts and frames children in sexual situations, but it is not porn. It would not be classified as obscene. But because his doujins depict children having sex with adults, those would be considered obscene and they would not be protected under free speech.
This is all dependent on what state you live in. Again, we have a gray legal area when it comes to lolly doujin or things of that nature. In the state of California, completely fine. If you live in somewhere probably like Tennessee, you should probably be okay as well. But if you're in like Virginia or Utah, then you're gonna get shit on.
I'm not going to pretend I know what this guy's deal is. I don't know what's in his heart. But the mere sexual attraction to children is enough to be classified as a pedophile. It does not matter if they have actually engaged in a criminal act or not.
In a lot of those cases, especially the ones when it comes to lolly type material, or even when it comes to pedophilia in this particular case, a lot of it is down to mental health. The people that don't have the best mental health usually do things like this, and it's even been treated as such. Whenever you go to maybe a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you will usually find that people that have mental health problems have this same affliction.
I think it is important to note that as of 1968, pedophilia is listed in the APA as a mental disorder, which would make it not a choice but a diagnosis. However, I'm not sure how much faith to put in that, considering how enormously under-researched this issue is, and considering that homosexuality was also listed as a mental disorder until 1973, and that being transgender was only removed from the APA in 2012 under the term gender identity disorder.
When it comes to transgender studies, it looks like it's under the same boat as the pedophilia one if you really want to go that route. It doesn't have that much evidence supporting it. In fact, on the APA website, it even has its own section about if transgender is a mental disorder, stating that a psychological state is considered a mental disorder only if it causes significant distress or disability. Many transgender people do not experience their gender as distressing or disabling, which implies that identifying as transgender does not constitute a mental disorder. And a little further down, it says, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, people who experience intense, persistent gender incongruence can be given the diagnosis of gender dysphoria.
And literally before anyone tries to frame pedophilia as another sexual orientation like homosexuality, I would posit that you cannot have a sexual orientation where the party you are attracted to is legally incapable of giving consent 100% of the time. They are in no way comparable.
The only people that are advocating for that to be changed are the pedophiles themselves, not the normal people that are, I say normal people, but the lolicons that engage with art of not real people.
If my theory is wrong and pedophilia is still categorized as a mental illness 10 or 20 or however many years from now, after more research has been done, then obviously I would prefer these people use drawings of child porn as an outlet and not actual child porn. If it is a mental illness and recovery were a possibility, then obviously I would prefer that over unnecessary incarceration.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would prefer that someone use drawings rather than going out and touching the real kids. I think that the pedophiles should go ahead and face the wall. Go ahead and get your guns out, boys, because that's a thing. In Minecraft, if YouTube actually cares that much, I don't know. We're so far into this video that if they care that much, then I think we're just all in trouble.
But that was not the point I was trying to make.
Then what is the point? And you can just come out and say it.
Also, as a disclaimer, I shouldn't even have to say this, but do not harass anyone. I specifically made this video to address how completely out of control online harassment has become. Do not use this video as an excuse to harass or bully or send death threats to anyone.
The same goes for anybody that's viewing my video and thinking this is some kind of gotcha to go ahead and harass this fine YouTuber. I think that if you don't like anything that she says, then be constructive about it, but don't go out of your way to do anything that you wouldn't want done to yourself.
The links to all my sources are in the description in case anyone would like to actually learn more about these issues for themselves. Otherwise, I am moving on.
Some of those links were so old, they were like finding Pepsi Blue at the bottom of a fucking cooler dug into the ground. Which, by the way, Pepsi Blue's coming back out, guys. Yay!
So this is actually a great way to segue into a topic that I've wanted to discuss for a while, which is problematic media and everything that entails, like cancel culture, death of the author, how media we consume impacts reality. I promise you that I had parts of this script written months ago, and I did not furiously whip it up because a bunch of strangers were kind of weird in my comments section.
It's fine to say that you amended it, though. I mean, are we really going to kid ourselves? We sit in front of computers and we hit a little record button and then we make video.
But what I found interesting about the negative responses was most people knew they couldn't outright defend the sexualization of Kana or Ilulu's design because it would implicate them as siding with people who think that being sexually attracted to children is fine.
If you want someone to definitively come out and say something about the Dragon Maid thing and how sexualizing Kana is okay, I think I'll do it. You know what? I'll put it out there for you. I think that it's perfectly fine. In fact, I think that you should, almost at any point, if you're seeing some anime cartoons and you are within your legal right, given that you live in a state that allows it, you should lewd them at any cost. I don't really care. At this point, it's not something that I have to engage with, and I don't have to like it either, and I also don't have to go out of my way to see it.
Which, some people still did do that anyway, though, and those people can leave.
Maybe they wanted a discussion, but I guess we'll just throw them out.
But most of them worded their grievances so that they weren't directly addressing the actual points that I made, but framed it so that the problem was with me and my perceptions. The most common responses being some form of, it's just fiction, not reality.
Yeah, because I can kill anybody in Grand Theft Auto or Minecraft, and I can still sleep good at the end of the night knowing that I killed digital pixels on a screen.
Or, if you don't like, don't watch. Which, wow, the scales have fallen from my eyes. Truly, how could I have been so blind? I am a human being that is clearly unable to distinguish fiction from reality. How silly of me! I wonder why all those people were so upset at the minstrel shows and the depiction of blackface when it's just a drawing after all. Art never has an impact on people, obviously. Like all those people upset at the Confederate flags and statues in America? What? They're just statues in fabric. It's not like their presence means anything. I mean, it's not like a drawn image can reinforce and perpetuate harmful ideologies to the people who see them, so much so that a government might even take action to ensure that depictions of those images have legal consequences. Oh, wait!
I was planning to go full on in this video. I was planning, maybe I should cover every single part in this second video that you made as a follow-up. But you don't deserve it. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. And it's because of one fatal flaw. It's really because of one thing that you've done in this video, which is try to correlate something like lolly hentai, something that is completely fictional. That doesn't happen because if you said like even the author, the creator of Dragon Maid, made this thing, that it doesn't mean that they are a pedo. Great. But how are you going to say now that it is just like minstrel shows, which were actually a real thing in history? A real thing that happened to black folk is getting exploited. And then saying that these statues, well, obviously they're just, fictional. They're not real things. Yeah, they're of real people that existed. Their ideals still probably exist in the real world. And you dare to say that lolly hentai, something that has no basis in reality, is the same as black people being enslaved. In fact, there would be a plug segment at the end of this video, but I just don't even feel like I'm up to it at this point. I think, honestly, no matter what arguments you come up with, it wouldn't be enough. Nothing would ever be good enough to tell you why you're wrong, because again, you'll block it out and all you'll do is make another Tumblr post and then you'll say how everyone else misunderstood your point. You're no better than the anti-tubers that you try to shit on. You don't say anything productive whatsoever. Pause and Select, another popular anti-tuber who showed up on Twitter.com, decided to give you a piece of his mind, and he did it in the most elegant way possible and engaged in the conversation that you wish that everybody that came to your comment section would have. And all you did was shrug him off. You literally just made sure that you didn't have to engage with him, and you didn't want to do anything with it. You just said, well, that doesn't affect me and the things that you're passionate about. Well, keep that same energy, because on your art blog, it's literally you posting underage characters engaging in somewhat explicit things, such as kissing and maybe even trying to dig their hands in each other's pants, which would then make you the biggest hypocrite alive. I don't want to hear about how it's okay for you to do something, but it's not okay for the people that aren't doing anything illegal and, given that they live in the state where it's at, are engaging in something that is completely harmless. I think that you are probably the worst person I've ever covered in my entire 3 years of doing anything YouTube related. In fact, I don't want nothing to do with any tubers anymore at this point. I feel like my brain is slowly melting into some type of fucking mush, and I can't fix it because people like you keep popping up. You guys don't care about anything that you're interested in, and you can say, well, I'm deflecting all of your points by just being angry, and I'm making videos out of anger. Well, fuck those people too. In fact, I think I might just be taking a break. I think I want to focus on something a little bit more productive. Because I swear, the AniTubers didn't stop you, and this isn't to save them either. This isn't to try to get the win for them. I could give a fuck less. If they really wanted to stop you, if they wanted to gatekeep you, they would have. But they didn't, because they're afraid. I don't really care. And if it means me going down to 1 subscriber, at least I'm making one person happy. But if it means gaining 100,000, I don't really care. I don't care about numbers that way. But I'm not going to let you compare drawings to the fucking suffering of African Americans because you want to make a point about, well, cartoon bad. You can go fuck yourself.